short, the worst is yet to come, and for many people, 2023 will feel like a recession.
Now, the International Monetary Fund is predicting that the growth outlook for the world looks bleak, and they're anticipating that 2023 is going to feel like a recession for millions around the world. And what's more, the IMF says that the worst is yet to come. So what really is the growth outlook for the world and for India? Today, we're looking at what the world can expect going forward. The International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, economists, several CEOs claim that a global recession is inevitable. In fact, many of them claim that some countries in the world may already be in a recession. Economist Nouriel Roubini, we know him better as Dr. Doom, he's predicting, of course, that the recession this time may be long and that it may be ugly. Remember, this is the same economist who predicted the 2008 financial crisis. And he also goes on to predict that the S&P 500 may be heading for a sharp correction. But US President Joe Biden disagrees with such bold predictions. And yet, with much of the global institutions cutting growth forecasts, Joe Biden himself does concede. He does accept that the country may dip into a recession, although it may be for a short period. The biggest headwinds affecting global economies are high inflation because of the Russia-Ukraine war, because of rising interest rates to control inflation, weakening currencies, and of course, mounting public debt. So how are different economies around the world holding up given all these headwinds? Let's start with what the IMF has said. The International Monetary Fund has cut its GDP forecast for the world by 0.2% to 2.7% from its July forecast. It's also said that the world's growth forecast is the weakest since the year 2001. And this includes a weakness in the biggest economies in the world, which includes that of the US and China. The American economic growth is pegged at 1.6% for this year. It's 0.7% lower than its previous estimate. And of course, it's added that lockdowns in China would slow its growth rate to 3.2% this year, which is the lowest growth for China in a span of decades. So what is the impact of global growth slowdown on India? Now, the International Monetary Fund is saying that India is in a relatively bright spot compared to several other countries, but has also said that the country is not immune to global headwinds. The IMF has cut India's growth rate to 6.8%. Earlier, it was 7.4% in July. And also, the International Monetary Fund is saying that it will continue to be the fastest growing economies among major countries. In fact, it's not just the IMF that has flagged slowing growth in major economies. The World Bank too warning that the world could slip into a recession in 2023. The World Bank says the pace of interest rate hikes by central banks around the world could slow growth in major economies and tip the world into a recession. And it goes on to predict that GDP growth could slow to 0.5% in 2023. In fact, the World Bank has also said that the blowback of the Russia-Ukraine war and the ongoing monetary policy tightening could hurt growth in India. The Reserve Bank of India has cut its growth forecast for India from 7.2% to 7% for 2022-23. It has said that volatility in international currency and financial markets is the biggest factor for its growth forecast cut for India. But RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das remained optimistic that the domestic economy remains fairly resilient despite its recent repo rate hike. The RBI has hiked repo rates by 1.9% since April 2022, which is pretty much in line with most of its peers. But private banks, including JP Morgan, are of the view that central banks across the world may be pushing the world towards recession with their tight monetary policies. So the consensus is that a global recession is pretty much inevitable. But for now, India seems to be positioned better than its peers.